There is only one question that I personally use to determine whether to launch a podcast the quick and dirty way or whether planning a launch really carefully is the best approach. Want to know what that question is and why I think it's the only thing that matters? Then listen to today's episode and find out. You're listening to Podcasting for Experts with honest conversations about using podcasting as a tool to grow your reach, increase your audience, make a positive impact on the world, and most importantly, to get paid for your efforts. I'm your host, Jess, and we are Pristine Podcasts. Let's talk podcasting. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Podcasting for Experts, the show for business owners and industry experts that want to successfully leverage podcasting as part of their marketing strategy. I'm Jess, I'm the co-founder at Pristine Podcasts, and this is season 4, episode 1. And today we're going to be talking about the best way to launch a podcast that works for you. So I'm not going to do this annoying thing where I start waffling about something else and I tell you 15 different stories and I don't actually give you the question that I usually ask myself and then I ask clients until 10 minutes into the episode. I'm actually going to front load the question and give it to you right now. And then I'm going to tell you why this question is so important for you and why it determines which approach you can take with your podcast. So the question that I personally love to ask myself and also love to ask clients is this one. How big is your audience? Wow. That was one underwhelming question, wasn't it? So the question isn't actually what matters here. It is really the thought process that goes on behind asking this question. So I want to illustrate why the question, how big is your audience, is one of the most important determining factors for me when it comes to launching a new podcast. And I'm going to use 2 examples of 2 of past clients to illustrate why audience size matters. Size matters. Okay. So take client number 1. Let's rename her to Karen. So we have Karen. Karen has built up a sizable audience over the last few years of running her business and becoming really the go-to expert in her niche. So she has around 80,000 followers on Instagram and she has an email list of around 40,000 people that is reasonably active. Her aim with starting the podcast is to make this her main piece of marketing content. She wants to interview high-level guests and she really wants to elevate her brands and position herself well for potential future opportunities like speaking opportunities, as well as potentially publishing a book and other collaborations with big name brands in her industry. So the goal for Karen, realistically, is to port as many listeners as possible from being on her email list and in her socials to becoming podcast listeners. She also wants to attract a really good high-level guests onto her show. So these are people that are published authors, that are speaking, that run, big companies in her industry. So for her, getting into the podcast charts in her category is actually also going to really help her to achieve that goal because it's going to elevate the level of the actual show. So she wants to port as many listeners as possible so that she gets the download numbers, so that she can get sponsorship deals from brands and work with them closely. She also wants to get into the charts so that she can go and position herself really as the expert in her niche. And that's going to attract more high-level guests and also more high-level brands onto the show, and will continue to ensure that she can grow that listener base. Therefore, for her to take 2 to 3 months to really carefully plan out the strategy that she's going to use during the podcast launch period so that she can migrate as many of her listeners from other platforms to the podcast, that makes sense, right? Because the kind of goals that she has, she can't just achieve them by launching super fast, right? Now take client number 2. Let's call her Emily. Emily has a much smaller audience, maybe around 1.5K followers on Instagram, as well as an email list of around 1,000. Her email list and her social, they're actually very engaged. And many of those people have come from Emily's direct network. So they're people that she's masterminded with and their connections. She might have, met these people through people that book discovery calls with her. She might have met them through groups that she's in. So many of these people have actually had a direct interaction of sorts with Emily. And overall, she is also going to create the podcast because she wants to make it her main form of content that she uses in her business. However, she isn't looking for PR opportunities. She isn't looking for high-level guests to come for interviews. She isn't looking to rank in the charts. She is simply looking to create a database of very valuable content that regularly attracts new people to her and then converts them into leads and sales through showing her expertise and through building trust with her audience. Now, even if Emily was to spend the next 2 to 3 months painfully planning out the launch of her podcast, she isn't really going to get a huge amount of benefit from it because she doesn't have a huge audience that she can port from other platforms to catapult herself, into the charts. She is creating the podcast for a very different reason. And with that, she still starts at 0 episodes. She still needs to go and create the content. She still needs to invest the time every single week to build up this level of content. So if Emily spends 2 to 3 months to carefully plan out the launch of a new podcast, she's actually wasting her time because she isn't going to get a huge benefit from investing that time. She's actually just losing 3 months of her life and causing a delay. So the size of the audience that you have and the goals that you have, they will hugely impact the actions that you're going to take when you're thinking about launching a podcast. So actually, for most small business owners that haven't been around for a very long time and that haven't built up tens of thousands of followers, which is probably the majority of our audience that we speak to, launching a podcast the quick and dirty way is actually the best thing you can do just to get it done. So why does it happen that we get stuck in this limbo where we actually know that the most important thing we can do is to just get it done? However, we make the getting done process more difficult for ourselves because we put all these barriers in place. Like, I can't launch this podcast because I've never launched something before. And I first have to learn how to do that. And I have to write a big plan. And then I have to do this. And then I have to do this for 1 week and send X number of emails and write X number of posts. And we make this whole thing very complicated. And why does this happen? I think it's actually only logical for us to think like that, because if you think about it, the people that you follow online, those people most likely are businesses and business owners that are further ahead on their business journey than you are, right? So there are people that have different goals. There are people that are at an entirely different stage in business, and they have to be more strategic. They tend to act slower. They tend to be way more considerate with their actions. They often have larger teams to organize. And if they're being smart, they have an entire quarter already planned out, and they've made sure that they have enough team members on board to do it. They have their copywriters, their designers, they have their customer support ramped up for something. So those are the people that you might be following. And then it's natural if every single person that you watch online shares how I launched this, how I launched that, how I made that amount of money doing it this way. This is how many emails we sent. This is how we greeted everyone with a personalized video. This is how we did that. When this is all the content that you're exposed to, then it's super easy to compare yourself to that person that has support, that is further ahead in business, that has more funds to invest than you, and to think, okay, if that person is doing that, that is what got them to the place that they are in now. And that's why I have to do it. And if I don't do that, then I will never get to that place because I'm not doing it the right way. The thing is, you're comparing your version of you right now to what could be you in a few months, in a few years. Okay, so you're comparing your version of now to their version of now instead of their version from 5 years ago. And that tends to then make it very easy for us to overcomplicate the things that we're doing. So if you go back, this is an exercise actually that I encourage people to do a lot. Go back to someone that you really likes. Profile. So let's say you really like, who could you really like? You really like, I don't know, Amy Porterfield. Don't look at what Amy Porterfield is doing now. Go all the way back to the earliest stuff that you can find when Amy Porterfield first got started. And you will see a version that is way closer to you and where you are at in your journey right now than what you're looking at this point in time. So it's basically natural seeing what we're consuming online, that to get to the point that this person is at, this is what I have to do. Other than that, it's not good. So I better think about this some more. And then 3 months pass, 6 months pass, 12 months pass. And at the end of it, you still haven't done the thing. Fun fact, I actually, Christmas 2021, we must have had about 400 to 500 people download our podcast launch toolkit. And as part of the exercises and as part of the email follow-up, I followed up with quite a lot of people that got this toolkit through a bundle that I was part of. And basically, out of all of those people, only 4 have responded to me to say that they've actually launched their podcast. And we publicly share that. So there is something in it for them to tell us that they've launched their show, because we can then go and send that out in our newsletter to our audience to let them know that there's new podcasts out there that they might really be interested in, right? So there is a huge benefit to sharing your new show. And whenever you have this opportunity, you go take it, right? So, okay, let's say only 50% of the people that launched their podcast actually replied to the email and said, yes, I did it. So that would still mean that out of 400 people, actually only 8 people took action. And that is a tiny percentage. So the thing is, taking this extra 3 months, this extra 6 months, this extra 12 months to think about it, to obsess over it, to make it better, to like get the perfect thing, that is not what brings you actual results. It is actually an advantage when you are getting started in business that you are small. You can act faster, you can ship things faster, and therefore you can test things faster. And then you can get some results, you can get feedback from your audience, and then you can change course and you can adjust depending on the feedback that you've gotten or depending on what you took away from the things that you've been doing, right? So realistically, when you are small, you can be fast. Those people that are way ahead of you that have teams of 20 people, I can tell you, I was in a team like that myself. I can tell you how long it takes to just get one dang thing finished. You know, someone has to have the idea, then there's got to be a planning session, then you got to put the strategy together, then you got to, share that to everyone on your team. Then you got to have weekly meetings to check in that everyone is doing their thing. And then you got to get the data people involved. And then there's got to be some ads people. And like, it is this big thing. When you are small, this is your advantage. It's your advantage that you can still do things quick and dirty. And it actually has more advantages for you to do that than for you to spend 3, 6, 12 months or 2 years or 5 years thinking about all the things that you could do without ever taking any action and actually doing them. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're small, it does not take longer than 1 weekend to launch your podcast and put it out there. And that is actually exactly what we're going to be doing probably once every couple of months going forward. And that's what I want to invite you to today. So if you're listening to this and you haven't launched your show and you've put it off 15 times, maybe you even have a toolkit already with the full instructions on everything you need to do, but you just can't bring yourself to take action for one reason or another, then I want to invite you to podcast in a weekend. So we're going to be doing the first round on May 6th and 7th. It's going to be in the morning US time, and it's going to be in the afternoon UK Central European time. And if you're listening to this episode after, May 6th and 7th have passed, just check the website for the date for the next one. Like I said, depending on demand and depending on my availability, probably once every 2 to 3 months, we'll do podcast in a weekend. And in this weekend, we will do every single thing that you need to have so that you can leave the session with your podcast ready to submit to all the directories. So this isn't a course. This is actually a hands-on getting shit done weekend. So we're basically doing it the quick and dirty way. So we're going to meet on Zoom. I'm going to give you the instructions for the first thing that needs doing. You're going to go off. You're going to have, depending on what we're doing, 20, 30, 45 minutes to finish that thing. And the aim is to have it completely finished in that time. And by finished, I mean it is done. I don't mean it is perfect. It is not the most beautiful artwork. It is not the most beautiful description. It is not the best work that you could have produced if you obsessed over it. But at the end of it, it will be done. And that is what this weekend is about. So we're going to keep popping on Zoom, instructions, feedback, off Zoom, get it done, come back, next thing, off Zoom, get it done, come back, etc. And by the end of the weekend, you will have your podcast ready to submit. And that includes recording your first content. Okay. So if that is something that you would like to do because you are tired of actually overthinking it all and not doing anything at the end of it, then I would love to have you join in. You can find all the details at pristinepodcast.com/podcast in a weekend. And that's literally all one word. And I will also put the link into the description of this episode as well as into the show notes on our website. So you can find out more over there. And of course, if you are a more established business owner and you have a larger audience and you want to work with us to put a proper launch plan together for you, then you can do that as well. You can just reach out to us at hello@pristinepodcast.com. All right, I'm going to leave you with a quote today. Allegedly, this is what Eleanor Roosevelt said, but I say allegedly about every quote now because I'm never too sure about that. But here it goes. We gain strength and courage and confidence by each experience in which we really stop to look fear in the face. We must do that which we think we cannot. And with that one, I hope to see you at Podcast in a Weekend. Please stop procrastinating. And I hope you have an amazing day. And as always, I will see you for the next one. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. If you want to get accountability and support when launching your show, don't forget to check out Podcast in a Weekend at pristinepodcast.com/podcast in a weekend. We would love to support you.